Welcome, dear listeners, to another episode of Safe Spaces podcast, where we explore the depth and nuance of what really means to be safe, what it looks like, how it feels, to show up as yourself, and to grow into the person that your heart knows you to be. Today's episode is a very special one. I'm joined by a man I greatly respect both personally and professionally, Colin Wishard, a seasoned HR consultant and member of my BNI business networking family. Colin brings a grounded, human centered approach to his work in human resources, something I know many of you listening in will resonate with deeply. Our conversation today, it's all about showing up as the best version of yourself in life, not the shiny, perfect, performative self, but the self that knows when to pause, recalibrate, and take personal responsibility without shame or self blame. So, we'll be talking about how to recognize when you're not quite in alignment, how avoidance often masks our most tender unmet needs, and also what it really takes to hold space for accountability, especially when things get hard. So Colin's insight, especially through the HR lens, those insights are very rich in compassion, strategy, and practicality. And as always, we lean into some questions and some stories, vulnerabilities that often um, can make people feel a little bit uncomfortable. But that soft strength that vulnerability brings, that safe spaces are made of. So whether you're navigating leadership, recovering from burnout, or simply seeking more authenticity in your everyday life, I hope that this episode reminds you that you don't have to do everything perfectly. You just have to show up with presence. So let's grab a cuppa and get into it. Hi, Colin. It's great to have you here today.
Hi, Mary. It's lovely to be here. I'm very excited to have a chat with you about this and
This is
to see where this goes. Interesting conversation topic.
Yes, very exciting. And I know a lot of our audience is introverted, intuitive, feeler type person. And I think we both might be kind of fitting into that category quite nicely. So I think a lot of independent thinkers and independent feelers are going to enjoy our conversation today.
Fantastic.
So my my first question that I was kind of dying to ask you, because we've known each other through business networking for quite a while. So
Yeah.
I've seen you bring a lot of the HR elements into your 60-second presentations and a lot of our conversations. But I know there's a deeper level. So I have some questions that are taking us deeper today. But the first one that I wanted to talk to you about is, how do you recognize, either at work or in your personal life or just everyday interactions, when you're not showing up as the best version of yourself? And what do you usually do then to bring yourself back into alignment?
It's a great question because I guess when you're looking at the best version of yourself, it's you're not always there, and it's quite regular that you're not there.
Yeah.
And getting yourself to a point where you can present at that point and present the way you need to in a certain situation can be quite challenging, and something that I've struggled with throughout my career. And I guess being in HR and also being a parent and a husband, you do fluctuate quite a lot in terms of how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis. So something that I got told a long, long time ago is that you are responsible for the energy that you bring to the space. And
Mm.
that's something that has really resonated with me and stayed with me for a long time. And when I am feeling pretty flat, I can normally pick it up in the mornings if I'm on my way to a meeting or on my way to work, or I'm heading home and I've had a pretty tough day,
Yeah.
that I'm just not in a great headspace. So I guess in a lot of instances, because you have your professional self and your personal self, there are certain times where you just need to show up and show up the right way.
Yes.
And I sometimes I really need to repeat to myself, you are responsible for that energy. And I think a lot of people underestimate how much influence they have around on the people around them.
Yes.
So really important to turn up and have the right energy. BNI is a great example because it's early in the morning. Sometimes it's very cold, and sometimes the energy is just not there. So you need to bring that energy. You need to put the right emphasis into how you're feeling, so you are showing up and presenting yourself the right way. And that's not always being super sharp or super on point. Sometimes that's just being authentic and turning up as you, but making sure you're bringing the right energy to those around you, so you're not sucking the energy out of the people that you're dealing with, whether it's your family or whether it's your colleagues or your manager or girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever it might be. Your influence is quite significant, and it's something that I take quite a lot of responsibility for. And if I see someone feeling quite flat, I try and pull them out of it as well and boost them up.
Yeah.
Compliments, supportive conversations, asking how are you is a good way to go.
Right.
And work through it from there. But I guess in terms of me recognizing, I'm generally feeling pretty flat. I'm tired. I'm either not looking forward to it, or I'm trying to find an excuse around not being somewhere or doing something. But I guess as a leader and as a husband and as a parent, I need to take that responsibility on, and I just need to turn up. Sometimes I need to put a mask on because that's
Right.
not at all how I'm feeling. So I'm not pulling the other people around me down with me.
Yeah. You're bringing up so many really good points. And one of the things is kind of, because what I'm not hearing you say, always pretend like you're okay even when you're not. So be authentic, but also what I'm hearing you say is be authentic, but also be aware of the energy that you're bringing into a space. Interacting with people authentically doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be happy, clappy, and all the time, on. But also, masks do play a very good and an important part, I think, in interactions. But the skillful usage of the mask, not over relying on a mask to kind of make something be something that it's not, like not being, for the lack of a better way of saying, being dishonest with your mask. That's not, I don't feel that that's okay, but it's good to be able to use your masks strategically and knowing where it is safe for you to be wholly yourself.
Yeah.
And when it's not, because it's not always safe or appropriate.
No, it's not. It's not. And it's actually quite a fine balance that you need to have with the masking as well, because if you're masking too much and you find yourself masking in every situation, you can burn out really quickly.
Yeah.
And look, I've burnt out in a previous role, and as much as I like to say I'm responsible for the energy I bring, sometimes, and I did get to a point in a previous role where I wasn't able to do that. I wasn't able to I guess I wasn't able to bring the energy, and I wasn't able to put myself in a position where I was feeling the right way and doing the right way to those around me, and I was being a negative influence on them. And in hindsight, I'm like, well, I probably overstayed my time in that role, or I
Yeah.
didn't speak up and speak my thoughts and feelings. So it's quite a fine line to as to where your mask, or how much of your time is spent masking.
Right.
And as someone that's been recently diagnosed with ADHD as well, that's there's a lot of masking that comes in terms of what you think you should be doing and versus what you are doing.
Yes.
And there's a lot of self-learning that comes with that as well.
Absolutely. That is so insightful. That piece of learning to use the masking, when is it too much where you're getting burned out or people don't actually get to know the real you?
Yeah.
Versus when I use this in especially introverted intuitive, like INF lingo, I talk about being emotionally slutty in the in environments where it's not appropriate, like being too overly emotionally sharing as well. Fine balance. Fine balance to walk, for sure. So from kind of the HR perspective then, what are some of the most common ways that people avoid taking personal responsibility of how they're showing up? Like, what do you think that how it shows up, and what are those patterns trying to mask or protect, maybe?
Uh, there's a couple of things, and depending on where the pressure's coming from or how they're feeling. Overworking is a common one. If they've got a lot going on at home and they're trying to avoid dealing with certain emotions or feelings or situations that might be
Right.
happening outside of work, you see them working longer hours. They're more immersed in their work than what you've seen in the past.
Yeah.
Which is showing them avoiding something. Avoidance is a big one, whether it's
Yeah.
avoiding going home or avoiding doing certain tasks within the workplace as well. But
You're right.
avoidance is a big one. The other part is trying to, if something does come up, or if you try and have a conversation with someone when you're trying to hold them accountable or talk about something that should have been done that wasn't, it's shifting the blame or pointing the finger, or perhaps just trying to divert the attention to what other people might not be doing, as opposed to taking responsibility for what they're doing. So as an HR person, that's something that's pretty common. Outside of that, you've got passive aggressive compliance. So they're doing something, but they're making it very clear they're doing it under duress.
Right.
So there's a few elements to it. It can be a hard one to really nail down, because people generally can be quite avoidant and really answering the true question about what's going on when you do ask how they're feeling and start probing a little bit further.
Yes. Asking how they're feeling. So you're opening that door for that conversation to kind of almost like clear the air and then get back to work. Is that the idea?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess as an HR professional, I'm always looking at people's behaviors, and particularly shifts and how people would normally behave.
Yeah.
And because I'm keeping an eye on it so much, I can generally sense a fairly subtle shift over time in someone's behavior. And they're generally the cues of when to go in and say, look, is everything okay? How are you? And you'll get it. Yes, I'm fine. But if you keep building that trust and keep having that conversation, hopefully they'll get to a point where they start opening up, and then you can look at how you can support them in going through what they're doing. Sometimes there's not a lot you can do. Sometimes it's just an avenue or a safe place for them to vent. Other times, as an HR person, you can talk to their manager or other leaders about certain changes you might be able to make in the workforce, or addressing certain behaviours that are contributing to them feeling this way. So there might be certain behaviours that are happening that aren't appropriate.
Sure.
That are leading to them feeling the way that they are.
Absolutely. I think everybody's either witnessed or experienced something, especially in the work environment, that made them feel uncomfortable. And I think that everybody can relate to that to some degree. But your answer reminded me of something that because it's not always appropriate to try to address or try to help the person because they are workforce. It is still to the benefit of the people in charge and the leaders, the managers, and so on, to make sure that their workforce is in fact well and healthy, or as healthy as possible, and as integrated within to be able to do the job as well as possible.
Yeah, and I think the governments and the regulatory bodies are starting to appreciate that businesses have a much higher responsibility in the well-being of their staff, both physically and mentally. And with the recent changes in psychosocial safety and the legislation that comes on the back of that, there is a much bigger onus on leaders and HR professionals to be on the lookout for signs of burnout, signs of people not coping with their current situation, and having avenues for them to be supported. Keeping an eye on workloads to make sure they're not overloading their teams. And then you've got the whole dynamic around your bullying, harassment, and
Right.
inappropriate workplace behaviours, and really being on the front foot and addressing those behaviours within the workplace so they're not getting exacerbated. And as I
Right.
said in my B&I pitch on last week, is the standard that you walk past is a standard that you set. So it's about
Yes.
leaders, when they're picking up on these things, being in a position to call them out, or at least pull someone aside and having a conversation with them about, look, that's not okay anymore. We can't talk like that. It's disrespectful, or it's not appropriate, or this is the sort of stuff that really can impact other people and have quite a significant impact on their health and desire to be in the workplace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as a trauma-informed practitioner, like having done that training, I was always attuned to it because of the trauma that I had experienced as a child. But when I did the training, I realized that there's this new standard coming, that treating people with respect is actually being standardized right now, and we shouldn't walk, as you said, walking past whatever behavior you walk past, you standardize. That's now okay. So
Absolutely.
beautiful.
It's look, that's really should be a given, treating people with
Sure.
respect, right?
Yeah.
That's not something that should need to be put into law or anything like that. But communicating with respect is something that I'm very big on. And I have to have difficult conversations with people on a
Yeah.
regular basis. And some people forget that there's a person at the end of that, and a person whose livelihood is tied up in this position. Their income is feeding their families and paying the rent and everything else. And I said a long time ago, the moment I forget and don't appreciate the impact that I'm having on someone else's life, when you go into some really hard conversations, particularly when it's around terminations or redundancies, then I need to find another career, because it does have such a big impact. But having those conversations and having them respectfully with compassion and understanding is really important. And look, you get all sorts of emotions that come up, but it's being there, it's sympathizing, it's supporting, and sometimes it's allowing them to vent, to get whatever they're feeling off their chest, but also in a safe way, and making sure that everybody in the conversation is safe at all times.
Yeah, beautiful. And I wanted to ask you on that, creating those safe spaces through conversations. What are some of the ways in conversations, maybe about accountability, especially when you're feeling vulnerable or exposed? What are some of the ways that you can create that safe space?
I think when you're going into any sort of meeting like this, it's you need to make sure that you're in the right headspace as well. And if you're going in there distracted or with something else in your mind, you're not turning up as the best version of yourself in a really critical conversation. So that's number one. Number two is really making sure you are approaching the conversation with empathy and compassion. There are things that you may raise that they are completely oblivious to, or that they're really embarrassed about, or something that they're just really uncomfortable about. And it's about talking through why they might be feeling a certain way and what the situation is, but also making sure you're pausing. So if they are struggling to articulate something, just give them time.
Yeah.
And if things do get too emotional, and if tears come out, or someone is just not in a position where they can have the conversation, just be willing to say, look, let's just give it a rest for today. Why don't you go either go and have a break and come back, or maybe we can revisit it tomorrow, and then marking it so you can come back at another time. But always maintaining curiosity and not framing it so you're not trying to blame anybody.
Right.
It's not about blame. It's about understanding what happened and how it happened, so that we can move forward in a constructive way with some change of behaviour or change in process or whatever it needs to be.
Yeah. That part about pressing pause, like just having the almost like if it gets emotionally too heavy or too unregulated, that you're able to press the pause and say, hey, let's take a little break, or, knowing when the person is clearly not coping. That's also a skill. And I don't know about you, like what you're saying, it reminds me of this thing that I've had for years and years and years when I have really difficult conversations, especially with people close to you, because sometimes it's not at work. Sometimes it's your spouse, or it's your parent, or it's your sibling, or it's, whomever that you
I was
have
about
to
to bring
have.
that up as well, and mention that
Yeah.
it's not just a workplace
Yeah.
situation.
That you have to have those hard conversations, that if you can have that compassion and try to see the person on the same team with you, not, you're trying to work this through, as opposed to you're trying to, make them hear your side of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess it comes back to actively listening to what they're saying as well, and then being able to
Yeah.
reframe it and really understand what the emotion is that's coming into it. And I guess when it's a lot harder when you're doing this with a spouse or a parent, having that pause when you can feel your emotions getting escalated, or you can see the other person's emotions are escalating,
Yeah.
and having the courage to come out and say, okay, my emotions are getting the better of me,
Yeah.
and I can see yours are. Do you mind if we just stop this conversation and have it another time when we've both calmed down?
Yeah.
It's a really hard thing to do, and something that my wife and I have been working on for the last couple of years is really being able to say, no, let's not do this now. This is not the right time.
Right.
Let's do it another time when we're not tired and cranky and ready for sleep, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Let's do it tomorrow, where we can sit down and have a really meaningful conversation that will allow us to talk through these emotions and these issues, and come
Yeah.
out with a way that at least we both understand each other's perspectives and can move forward. And that can be taken to the workplace as well,
Sure. Sure.
or vice
So you're
versa.
saying, sorry?
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa, for sure. Yeah. So you're basically doing what you can to set it up for a successful conversation, as opposed to just for the sake of having it and getting it off your chest and kind of like jumping in
Yeah,
there.
and look, people don't like feedback.
It's true.
People don't like being informed that they've been doing something the wrong way, or that their performance is slipping, or that the behavior is poor. People just don't
Yeah.
want to hear criticism, and
Mm.
some people are they talk about being open to it, but then when you go in and have a conversation about it, the defenses automatically go up.
Yeah.
And you need to get through those defenses, particularly if HR is involved. So if I'm in a situation, wherever I can, when I'm working with a team or a manager, my first suggestion is for the manager to sit down and just have a conversation with the person, or go for a walk and have a conversation. That can be quite often really disarming,
Yes.
and allow for a really meaningful discussion about what's going on. But the first point of call is for the manager and their team member or their employee to just have an open conversation about what's going on, how they're feeling. Is there any support that they need?
Yeah.
And have that as a starting point. Then if they get some information out of that, maybe they can make some changes within what they're doing, or how things are operating.
Mm-hmm.
Then if it happens again, having I guess a more serious conversation. Look, had a chat last week. This is what we discussed. I've noticed this behavior is continuing.
Mm.
This is the situation. This is what you're doing, and this is the impact that it's having on the team, or on production, or on those people around you. Moving forward, do you mind just changing that and doing X, Y, and Z?
Right. Yeah.
Because as soon as I get involved, or any HR person for that matter, there's an added level of anxiety that comes with it.
Right.
And I'm really conscious of the impact that I'm having on other people when we have these, because of the nature of HR. HR doesn't have a good reputation. So many people have a negative experience with HR that when they go into
Yeah.
these meetings, the anxiety goes up and the defenses are up. So it can be you're already on the back foot because you're dealing with someone that's coming in with a whole lot of anxiety and thoughts about what might be happening.
Right. Fears.
Correct.
And it's all coming through at the front end, and that can lead to those, instead of having like comfortable in your boundaries and knowing that you're a sovereign being, that you're not going to be treated poorly by the HR, you might be putting the barricades up because you're so worried about what's coming up. And
because most people either have heard or have had really negative experiences with HR, and generally it's either a performance conversation, a redundancy, or a termination. And regardless of how well that process is handled, there is really a negative connotation associated with each of these meetings. So look, it happens, and I appreciate that, which is why I'm really quite careful around when we have the meetings and when invitations are sent out, not doing it on a Friday so people aren't worrying. Making sure I'm dressing not too fluffy in my introduction, and getting as quickly to the point as I can, but also being understanding. So it's there is a high level anxiety that comes with any sort of meeting like that. So giving managers the skill and the ability and the confidence to have those conversations themselves is something that I work with a lot of people on as well.
Yeah. And I think from the person that you are, you also naturally bring in a like almost you do it, I think, organically, but I think you bring it in that kind of compassion, that you teach people to have a compassionate approach, because you've seen, that those walls go up so quickly, and, people can kind of clam shut, and then it becomes a whole different battle that you need to then fight. So teaching those managers and encouraging them to, or the bosses, whoever is in charge, who has to have these conversations, you're teaching them to bring it around with competence, yes, confidence, but also compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. And also make sure they are listening. And talking through active listening and what that actually means, rather than look, your job you're not there to defend what they might be saying. You just need to listen and then look at whether there is really something that needs to change. Even if someone's done completely the wrong thing, just listen to the reasoning before responding.
Exactly.
So some people listen to respond, and a lot of people actually listen to respond rather than listen to understand. And it takes a lot of skill and a lot of time to develop that. But really seek to understand what they're trying to say before putting your thoughts or getting defensive about what they say. I've seen a lot of managers in these meetings get defensive about what might be coming back. And then their emotions start coming up. But you need to, one of the fundamental things, you have to remain calm. And you can't go in to defend. You can share a point of view, but there's no point in arguing. It's not an argument.
No.
That just escalates everyone's emotions.
You're trying to solve a problem, not create one.
Correct.
So then, can you share a time in your own life when you've had to face a difficult truth about yourself or your life, and how that changed the way that you now lead others and support others in facing difficult times in their lives?
I guess a little bit like you. I had a lot of trauma in my childhood, and as a person, I'm really conflict avoidant. So I hate conflict. So I don't know how I ended up in a role where I'm in the middle of conflict on a regular basis, but conflict is something that has come up regularly, and it's something that I've had to do a lot of research and had to I guess retrain myself to step into situations where I can address conflict and I guess negotiate conflict with others. And look, it's still not my natural position, but I've been doing it for a long time now that I can step in and deal with it. I came out of a DV household. There was a lot of conflict within my household. So growing up and going into my early career, I was very, very passive in terms of things that occurred or getting involved in conflict. But I guess even the passiveness in more recent times has come up, and I've realised, particularly when it comes to toxic behaviours and inappropriate comments, behaviour, toxic masculinity, all these sort of things. It's in the past, and I guess it's the nature of where society was at the time. It's things that you would have let go, but I've actually had to be more conscious of how I'm responding to these situations, and making sure I am calling people out in that behaviour, but just doing it in a really compassionate way. To ensure that I'm trying to understand where they're coming from, but also making it clear that that's not something that I'm going to tolerate as a person being around, if it's in my personal life, or that I'm going to tolerate dealing with as a leader in the businesses that I'm working with.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and especially the again, it kind of comes back into that. What's the line that you're walking when you're calling out behavior that's not appropriate without, getting somebody's back up? Like, how do you do it in a respectful way? And I know, especially because I think that every woman in this world has experienced misogyny. I'm just speaking on my own behalf. This is not a political commentary of any kind. This is just my experience, where you're not being taken seriously, or you're not getting the same wage, or you're not being treated. You're being treated as less than just because you happen to be born in this gender. But where is that line that you can walk, where you can say, we don't do that, and not make it worse for the person who's already been marginalized, so they don't get like almost like a backlash? Because I'd say that's a really big part of
it really is a big part of it. And look, it's still one that I'm learning as well. So I'm certainly no expert when it comes to that. And some people that you can't raise with, because the backlash will be both on you and others. And it's about depending on what your position is, you either decide to and know you're going into battle, because sometimes you need to, or picking the time. And it's not when something's occurred. It's about a conversation later on about maybe if someone's really quite firm in their beliefs, it's about educating them on some of the changes or some of the impacts or what might be happening, or what this has created in other areas or throughout history or whatever it might be. But it's a difficult one to navigate, because it's something that I guess the male population hasn't really. It's only in the last 20 years that it's really come into place, and in the last 10 years in particular. So there's still a lot of people running businesses and in leadership positions that have these views that aren't appropriate. And for me, I am quite selective about the clients that I deal with.
I bet.
I'm dealing with people that are like this now that I'm in a position where I'm running my own business. But in the past, if it's come up with one of the managers or one of the leaders, it's around education, talking through the issues, and then really trying to advocate for other people without putting them in a position that's going to embarrass them, or make them feel like they are going to get targeted as a result of what I'm raising.
Yeah, like not in front of other people. Like, you're not looking to have an audience for your, do it privately, do it calmly. Like what you were saying before, remember to breathe. Like, don't bring your own baggage into it. They're just uncomfortable conversations. They're not going to kill you, although it may feel like that.
Yeah, that's right. And look, there are times where I've actually had to be really firm, and it has been a very direct conversation about how someone speaks or how the sort of jokes that they're telling, and it's a very black and white conversation. And in situations like that, I'm going into it where I'm not concerned about their response.
Yes.
because I
Yes.
need to make it very clear where the boundary is.
Yes. And that was going to be my next question, which is like, what would you actually say to someone who's hesitating to take responsibility for how they're showing up? Because they might be then afraid that they're going to be blamed for everything or be seen as a failure, because the failure piece is such a big thing for a lot of people, you know, like not trying new things because I'm going to fail at it. If we look at something like you're having to confront somebody, what do you actually say to them so that you can't dance around them, of course, but how can you make it verbally so that they won't feel like they are to blame, and because it could be ignorance or that they're a failure and they're failing in front of everyone?
I guess you can. That's a really good question. It requires a bit of thought there. I guess when you're talking to someone that doesn't know how to approach a situation, there is some vulnerability about imposter syndrome or failure or how they're going to look in front of others. It's about making sure they're aware of what they're standing for and why they're wanting to raise these things, and giving them the confidence to have that conversation. So look, it's going to be a hard conversation, but if you don't have this conversation, what is the outcome? Or if you do have it and it goes well, or it doesn't go well, what are the outcomes? Look at what will happen if it goes well, what will happen if it doesn't go well. Quite often, what will happen if it doesn't go well is very little.
Yeah.
But what will happen if it goes well is the person will see you, they will hear you, and maybe not the first time, but over time they will change.
Yes.
And that's really what you're trying to encourage people to influence others to change, so that they are not making you feel that way, or that they are not exhibiting those same behaviors over and over again. So it's really drawing a line in the sand, but also doing it in the right way, with compassion, with respect. So you're being very clear on what they're doing, how it makes them feel, and what they would like to see change them in the future. So that situation, action, result acronym. Does that help answer your question?
I think it does, because that's the key, is to kind of go, well, you know, for somebody who's fearing failure or has that kind of worry that they're not maybe as competent as they thought that they were, it's almost like you've already failed at it, mate. Like you're already making yourself look bad. Like, how do you say that in a way of, how do you kind of, is there a way of saying, hey, this has been affecting people in a negative way, and what you can do, you know?
Yeah, okay, sorry, I was thinking of the person on the other end having to address the behavior.
But you can say, you know, you can see it from both perspectives, and this is what I love about these kinds of conversations, because everybody takes something different from the questions as well. So addressing it, kind of saying, hey, you know, maybe you're already causing a little bit of a friction that doesn't need to be there. If we just tweak this and this and this, can you know, you'll probably see more positive results.
Sometimes people just aren't aware, they don't know.
Yeah.
And it's about raising that awareness with them, saying, look, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, and please just what I'm going to tell you isn't designed to put you down or make you feel invalidated or upset. It's really to help you move forward in a constructive way with those around you, because you may not be aware, but these comments that you're making are making people around you very uncomfortable.
Yes.
And they're not appropriate. It is not okay to be making these comments or saying these things in today's day and age. So this is what you're doing. This is the impact that it's having. And this moving forward, maybe reframe what you're saying, or just have a think about if you think it might offend somebody before you say it, then just hold back and don't say anything.
Yeah.
You're better off just pausing and not speaking rather than speaking and then looking foolish at the end of it.
Having to deal with all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people will take it on board, others won't.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
I was just going to say, like, there's so much talk about these days where, you know, everybody that doesn't agree with you is now a narcissist or pathological or whatever. Most people don't have a psychopathology. Most people are actually just not aware. We're just garden variety ignorant, you know, and most of the time, if we can show up in those situations in a way that is productive, we have the capacity to try and influence that outcome a lot
yeah.
more than if we just complain.
And the times where you'll get a lot of pushback is if what you're raising is challenging someone's beliefs, just the way that they were raised or the way that they are.
Yeah.
And if they push back really, really hard, depending on how confident you are,
Yeah.
you can say, look, you can do what you want to do.
Yes.
Away from me, that's your prerogative. But while you're
Yeah.
in this environment and while I'm here, I'm going to call you out on it, or it's not appropriate. And if you continue, then it's going to be a really unpleasant conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost like laying it out. Here's what it is. Here's what will happen. And here's what the outcome will probably be. And
Yeah.
then kind of sticking to making sure that you have the follow through on the boundary
Yeah.
if you do set it.
And look, I don't like to use positional influence or positional power in any conversation I have.
Yeah.
But within the workplace in particular, if someone's refusing to toe that line, at that point in time, I do need to use it. And
Yeah.
so that there are very real consequences for you continuing down this path.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again,
That's it.
for a conflict avoidant person, that's a very uncomfortable conversation to have. Still needs
Sure.
to happen.
Well, thank you so much for having these conversations and teaching people with compassion and competence how to have these difficult conversations, because the more that we're able to expand on the conversations that we have with each other, the communications, how we conduct ourselves, the more safe spaces we're able to create all around the world, even in our little tiny little corner of the world.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I look at particularly around the toxic masculinity and women's rights and everything like that. That's a conversation point that is occurring regularly within my home, and something my wife and I are very big on making sure our children understand respect, boundaries, consent, and everything like that. And it's such an important topic, and I want my daughter growing up knowing that she can say no and she can express herself without someone coercing her or trying to put her down or belittle her for expressing her views. That's not an environment that I want. So we work hard in trying to call that behaviour out when we can. And I think men around the world need to get the courage to call out the behaviour, call out the innuendo, the jokes, the negativity, but do it in a really respectful and caring way with those that are doing it. Is everything
Absolutely.
okay? This is not okay what you're doing. That's not the right way to talk to women. That's not the right way to act. We don't do that.
Yeah. Having those higher standards. It's all about your standards. And this isn't just to pick on men, because there are a lot of toxic feminine traits that are rampant in the world. We could talk about that maybe on another podcast episode. But I think what I'm hearing is that we both believe in treating people with respect, compassion, but also with clear boundaries when it's necessary.
Absolutely, completely agree.
Super. So where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
You can go to my website. It's www.everestpeople.com.au. and it's got all my contact details on there, or on LinkedIn. Search Colin Wishard, and yeah, if you have any questions or would like to talk further, I'd love to have a conversation.
Super. And of course, you can find us both at the Vision BNI chapter in
Absolutely.
Gosford.
Every Thursday morning.
Thursday mornings, Gosford Sailing Club. Come and join us there.
A lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and really
Yeah.
supportive group.
Yeah, for sure. Colin, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your time, your insight, your capacity to bring into the world more of those safe spaces that we all need. So thank you so much.
No, it's a big thing, and it's really important. Having those conversations and having them with the right attitude and approach is so important to how we function as humans.
What a great skill to have.
Yeah.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you so much, Merja.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of Safe Spaces. If you have a big takeaway or even a small takeaway from today's conversation, please put it into the comments below. We'll continue the conversation there. Thank you, Colin, and everyone. I will see you at the next one. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks a lot.